This video is brought to you by Miniature Market. Thousands of board games, discounted prices, miniaturemarket.com.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Hey, what's the best way to learn from somebody else, especially when taking up a trade like blacksmithing and things like that? The best way is to be an apprentice, and that's what we're going to be learning today. We're looking at an expansion for a popular game called Kingsford's Apprentices. This is from Game Salute, and it just adds a new strategy, a new way to play the game. Let me show you. The expansion first comes with enough dice to play with 5 players if you want to play now. Also comes with 3 different smithy tiles, which are double-sided. So if you want a different color, a different logo, you can have this. That's this side. Let's take a look at the other side. And there's the other sides of the smithy tiles, so the different logos that you can select now. This expansion also comes with 18 more craft cards. So here they go up as high as 135, and here's the different ones that you can see. Here's 4 more from 124 to 115 that you can take a look at. All right, 4 more from 107 down to 71. From 59 down to 8. And the last 2 from 7 down to 3. Now there's 16 new gather cards. Here's 8 of them. Some of them do some new things that we'll talk about, like getting corruption. We'll talk about that in more detail in just a moment. Some of them make you end the gather phase right away. But you can just kind of look at these different things that you can do with the new gather cards, which is going to give that game a little bit more variability. And here's the last 8. So the total is 16 gather cards. You can pause it here, look at these abilities, and see what they do. All the things I just showed you are sort of extra things, right? Because this is all about the apprentices. And here's apprentices. There's actually 18 of them that come in the game, but you'll only use between 6 and 12 of them each game as you range from 2 to 5 players. Now how these work is at the beginning of the game, you'll shuffle in again between 6 and 12 of these and randomly get them for each game. There'll be a pile of them, and each round there'll only be 3 of them face up. And on the round, you can, instead of going to the gather, grabbing a gather card or going to the docks, you can get one of the 3 that are face up for that round, and you can claim it. When you claim one, you put it in front of you and you turn it sideways. Unless at that point you can pay the cost of that apprentice. This one is, hey, I'm going to put any 1 die and 2 green dice, and they're both going to leave me at the end of the round out of the game for good, and then I could immediately get this ability. This is take a red die, put it right in your hand. So again, you're going to be hiring these. As they get hired, new ones come out. So let's go over the abilities of these things. So this one is you get a corruption token. This is really cool because at the beginning of the round, there's a new phase with the apprentices, is essentially any apprentice that you've already paid for, you can essentially use their ability every round. So this person will get you a corruption. Well, what do these do? Well, you saw some of the gather cards earlier have corruption. As soon as you have 3 of these at the beginning of a round, you get the lowest craft card that's out. So you actually get this for free. So the corruption is huge in this game. I love it. And they give you different abilities. Like this one does a 1-time reroll. This one, red and blue dice can be used interchangeably. A blue dice right into your hand. 3 different dice get +1. Again, this is every round. So again, you take one of these and then you would discard a gather card just as if you went to the docks, and you'd put it like this unless you can pay for it. When you can finally pay for it, that's when you flip it over, you get the ability, and every round you're going to get this ability. Now you can claim one and you cannot claim another one until you actually pay for it. But again, there's always only 3 of them available, and once one is taken, a new one is flipped up. So there's 6 of these abilities. Here's 6 more. You get a green die right in your hand. You get a green and black die right in your hand. If you roll a 5 or more, you get a corruption. If you roll a 5 or more, you get a black die. You roll a die when you craft, and you can use it as any type and +1. So it's like a wild and a +1. And this one, you may roll any dice on your smithy tile, which is huge. And let's look at the last ones. All right, you get a +4 in a die, a +2 in a die, a red die in your hand. You can flip any die to its opposite face, a green die in your hand, and 2 black die in your hand. So that's pretty much it. Again, these get taken during the gather phase, and you get to use them once per round once you've paid for them. And that's the Apprentices expansion. Now, I've already been a big fan of the base game Kingsforge. I think it's one of the best dice manipulation dice building, pool building games out there, because there's a lot of variability, and this game adds even more of that. I had recently reviewed the expansion to this called Glassworks with high reviews, and even the base game is great in this game, but you add even this expansion too, and it adds a 5th player, which was probably the only thing about the expansion I didn't really care about, because 5th is just going to make the game probably more longer than I would want it to last. But if somebody wants to play with a 5th player, it gives you that ability. Now, it adds many of the things that's not normal, or I would say not expected with this Apprentice expansion, is it gives you a ton more craft cards, which is awesome. Gives you a ton more gather cards. A lot of these gather cards are going to have to do with some of the abilities on the Apprentices. And again, as you're adding these different expansions and such, the game already had a lot of variability, but now you're adding in even more of the gather cards that you're shuffling in to get the gather deck at the beginning of the game. And so even more, the game's going to have a lot more replayability, because every time you play it, you're going to have different cards out there, because you just have so many more to shuffle through and to select for the, I think it's the 11 or so gather cards that you select during each game. So that's excellent. Same with the craft cards, more variability, awesome. Now the main crux of this are those apprentices, and I gotta say I love this idea. I don't think it complexes the game enough that you wouldn't be able to play this the first time if you're playing with people that play games a lot, but it does add another layer. And the thing I like most about this is most of them seem very powerful, and that's true. But you have to spend a decent amount to get them. So are you going to spend now to reap the rewards later, or are you just going to forget about them? Some of them are not as powerful as ours. Like one of them gives you a corrupt token every round, and every 3rd corrupt token you're getting the smallest craft right away. Another one, you have to roll a 5 or more to get it. Some of them, depending on how the game looks, you might pull the guy that has, give you a red die right in your hand. That's great. But if there's not enough red craft cards out for the game, it might not be worth it, and it can be sort of a trap where people that don't know the game well, you could head down this item and be spending all these different dice to get a bunch of these apprentices that might not end up being worth it in the end, and I like that. It's not just, I'm just going to buy this powerful guy and you buy that powerful guy and we'll see what happens. You actually have to think and look at the board and look at that game, which changes every time, because the craft cards come out different, and then you gotta decide which ones of these are worth it, and I really like that. So overall, I think it took a game that was already excellent, the base game, added more variability in the game and the crafting, more variability in the actions in the gathering, and then a whole new mechanism that's not that much more complex, but adds another layer. And so for this, I highly recommend it. If you like King's Forge at all, I highly recommend getting this expansion too, and that's Apprentices.
This video was sponsored by Miniature Market's Review Corner. The Review Corner features podcasts, video, and written game reviews by gamers for gamers. Miniature Market, the online gaming superstore. Thousands of board games, discounted prices. Check them out at miniaturemarket.com. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for backing me on Kickstarter and making this season become a reality. I'd like to especially thank those here that have backed me at the credit level. Now, these video reviews are also available by audio on our podcast. It's the intros and the final thoughts on GameBoyGeek.com. Click podcast.